Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. John Wallace had always believed his life was on the perfect path. The heir to a Chicago real estate empire, he was accustomed to getting what he wanted: wealth, respect, and social status. Married to Angela, a smart and elegant black woman, he believed their union would be a temporary compromise in a world obsessed with appearance and skin color. When Marcus was born, John felt an inexplicable emptiness. He couldn't accept the boy. He saw him not as a son, but as a constant reminder of his own prejudices and the social expectations he wanted to escape. On nights when Angela would introduce him to their baby in the hope of a moment of togetherness, he would look away or find excuses to disappear. A few months after Marcus's birth, John made the decision that would forever change the course of his life and that of his family. He left Angela, leaving behind the woman he claimed to love and the child he had never truly accepted. He left without a backward glance, convinced that distance would offer him peace and control over his life. Angela, broken but strong, raised Marcus alone. She transformed what could have been a weakness into an incredible strength. Marcus grew up surrounded by love, discipline, and an example of resilience. Every success he achieved was the result of silent sacrifices, sleepless nights, and his mother's unconditional love. 20 years later, John Wallace lived in luxury, surrounded by possessions and social recognition. But a deep emptiness still gnawed at him. Little did he know that a shadow from his past was about to knock on his door, a confident and charismatic young man with the name he had tried to forget, Marcus Wallace. This unexpected encounter would turn his life upside down, confront his regrets and force him to face the truth he had always refused: love and strength can never be broken by ignorance or prejudice. John Wallace sat in his luxurious office, his hands folded on a polished mahogany desk. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, illuminating the shelves filled with trophies and family photos carefully chosen to showcase the perfection of his life. Yet an unease lingered, a shadow that no amount of wealth could erase. As he prepared to sign a major real estate contract, his doorbell rang. Usually, this was the moment when his secretary, James, eagerly announced clients. But this time, there was an unusual silence before a calm voice spoke. "Hello, I think you know me very well." John frowned in surprise. "Who are you?" he asked firmly, trying to mask the nervousness rising within him. A young man entered the room. He was tall, athletic, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, and his gaze was direct and determined. His features were a mixture of strength and gentleness, and his eyes reflected a confidence John had never seen in his own son, whom he had abandoned 20 years earlier. "I am Marcus Wallace," he replied calmly. "And I am your son." John felt the ground give way beneath him. Years of ignorance and avoidance seemed to coalesce into this single moment. His heart pounded, his hands trembled slightly. Memories of his cowardice and past choices flooded his mind: the nights he'd ignored Marcus's cries, the hopeful glances from Angela he'd turned away, the moments he'd missed that no amount of money could buy back. My son," he stammered, unable to meet Marcus's gaze. Marcus sat calmly, as if waiting for John to find the right words. "Yes, Dad. I grew up without you, but I learned to build myself up despite everything. Today, I came to meet you. Not for revenge, but so that you understand." John felt a mixture of fear, guilt, and shame. Every word Marcus said struck directly at his heart. He realized, with brutal clarity, that his life of material success had never filled the void left by his absence. That day, in that lavish office, the man who thought he controlled his life realized that some ghosts from the past can never be ignored. And Marcus, the son he had abandoned, was there to remind him of his own lost humanity. John Wallace stood there, unable to breathe properly. The office, with its walls decorated with paintings of his accomplishments, suddenly felt stifling. Before him, Marcus, calm and confident, waited patiently. John felt each second stretch like an eternity. How did you find my address?" he finally stammered, his voice betraying the panic he was trying to hide. Marcus gave a small smile, but his eyes remained serious. "Dad, I didn't need much time. I always knew I'd find you again one day. John shook his head, memories of the past overwhelming him. He saw Angela again, young and beautiful, holding baby Marcus against her, reaching out to him in the hope of a connection he had never given. He saw his own excuses, his lies, his running away. All of it hit him now with painful intensity. Marcus, noticing his father's distress, sat down with a calm and confident posture. I want to tell you about my life, he said softly. Not to burden you, but so that you understand what I have accomplished despite your absence. John felt a wave of anxiety and curiosity mix. Speak. He whispered, his throat dry. Marcus took a folder out of his briefcase and placed it on the desk. Inside were photos, diplomas, certificates of achievement, and letters of recommendation for prestigious positions. John took the documents, scanning them with growing disbelief. You did all this alone? He asked, his voice trembling. Marcus nodded. Yes. My mother raised me with love and discipline. She taught me to turn every obstacle into strength. Every success you see here is the result of our efforts, not your presence. The shock was complete. John felt his chest tighten, unable to say anything. Everything he had missed, all his misplaced pride and prejudices, now stood before him in vivid and impressive form. Marcus, his son, an accomplished and charismatic man, radiating confidence and strength. Marcus looked up at him and said simply, You can choose to run from the past, but the past always catches up with you. John remained silent, aware that his life of luxury and material success had never been able to fill that void. For the first time, he clearly saw the extent of his mistakes. And before him, Marcus embodied everything he had tried to forget, the love he had never given, the strength he had ignored, and the resilience he could have shared. The shock of this encounter was brutal. John understood there was no longer any escape. The son he had abandoned 20 years earlier was there, alive, fulfilled, and ready to show him that love and determination are forces that neither time nor fear can destroy. John Wallace still held the file open in front of him, unable to look away. Every photo, diploma, and letter of recommendation he scanned struck him with an intensity he'd never known. Marcus had grown in strength, intelligence, and charisma, and John had missed all of it. You accomplished all this without me? John asked, his voice low, almost incredulous. Marcus nodded. Yes, Dad. And I learned that true strength doesn't come from a parent or money, but from love, discipline, and determination. My mother taught me how to turn adversity into strength. John felt a dull ache in his chest. He saw Angela again, young and determined, working day and night to raise Marcus. She had never given up, despite her loneliness and absence. Everything he had rejected had become a pillar for his son. Marcus then opened an envelope containing formal letters, internship offers at prestigious companies, university scholarship certificates, and even a newspaper article describing a technological innovation he had developed. John read each word with a mixture of pride and shame. Each of Marcus's achievements was a cruel reminder of his own failure. You see, Marcus continued, whatever you missed didn't destroy my life. On the contrary, it pushed me to become better, stronger. John felt tears well up in his eyes, but he fought them back with difficulty. He had always believed that money and social status could replace love and family commitment. Now he understood the truth, nothing material could compensate for absence and indifference. Marcus stood up and walked calmly around the office. Dad, I'm not here to burden you. I'm here so you understand that every choice has consequences, and that time lost can never be returned. John looked down, unable to answer. Memories of his past, his cowardice and ignorance, hit him hard. He realized that Marcus was not only a brilliant and accomplished son, but also a merciless mirror of his own mistakes. For the first time, John understood that wealth and power were nothing compared to the inner strength and resilience Marcus embodied. And he knew, deep down, that this encounter would change his life forever. Night was falling over Chicago, but John Wallace's office was still bathed in artificial light, bright and cold. John sat with the file open in front of him, but his eyes no longer saw the documents. He relived every lost moment, every foolish choice that had led him to this confrontation. "Dad," Marcus's voice echoed softly from the living room. "You're quiet. What's going on in your head?" John shook his head, unable to form a coherent sentence. Memories of Angela and baby Marcus assailed him. He remembered the nights he'd refused to rock his son, the ridiculous excuses he'd given to escape. He remembered his own fears and shame, but most of all, he remembered the pride he'd failed to nurture in Marcus. I don't know where to begin," he finally whispered. I never thought I'd miss you this much." Marcus sat next to him, but not too close. "Dad, I'm not here to judge you. But it's time you understood that your absences have consequences. I became who I am despite your absence, not because of it." Marcus's words hit John like a stab. He felt a guilt he'd never known before. His entire empire, all his money, all his social success, suddenly seemed paltry compared to his son's strength and achievement. John thought of Angela. She had raised Marcus alone, without ever complaining, with a dignity and strength that surpassed him. He realized that her abandonment hadn't destroyed Marcus, but had left a void within himself that he had never been able to fill. How could I have been so stupid?" John muttered, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I let my fear and prejudice decide my life, and yours." Marcus placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "You had your reasons, Dad, even if they were wrong. But today, you have the chance to understand and learn. It's not too late to change, to try to make amends, even a little." John felt a wave of remorse and a desire to make amends wash over him. He understood that he had to confront Angela, acknowledge his mistakes, and face the consequences of his past. He knew the road would be long, but he was ready to take the first step. That night, John Wallace did not sleep. He thought, for the first time, not about his business and material successes, but about his family, about Marcus and Angela, and about what he should do to try to make up for lost time. The next morning, John woke up with a strange feeling, a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Marcus was already waiting for him in the living room, a cup of coffee in hand, ready to share his life story. "Dad," Marcus began calmly, "I want you to understand what I've accomplished over the past 20 years. Not to crush you, but to see that absence doesn't define a person." John nodded silently. He needed to understand, to see in concrete terms what his son had built on his own. Marcus pulled out another folder, larger than the last. It contained conference photos, newspaper articles, and official documents. "After high school, I got a scholarship to Stanford University," he explained. "I studied computer engineering and data science. At 20, I founded my own tech company." John listened to every word with a mixture of pride and shame. He saw his son, not only intelligent and determined, but also charismatic and respected by all who knew him. Marcus continued. "Today, my company works with influential leaders across the country. But that's not all. I'm involved in philanthropic projects to help disadvantaged youth in Chicago, giving them opportunities that I had to create for myself." John felt his heart clench. Every success Marcus achieved was a mirror of what he had missed and of the child he had never supported. The man before him embodied everything he had rejected out of fear, ignorance, and prejudice. Marcus looked up and said calmly, "You see, Dad, my life hasn't been easy. But adversity has taught me to be stronger, more determined, and fairer. And despite everything, I've never harbored any hatred toward you." John, distraught, realized the magnitude of his own mistake. His material successes seemed paltry compared to Marcus's moral strength and accomplishments. He realized that his son was not only a brilliant entrepreneur, but also a living example of resilience and integrity. Marcus added with a subtle smile, "You can choose to stay in your regrets, Dad. But you can also learn, change, and be a part of my life now, if you're capable." For the first time, John Wallace felt hope mingled with his remorse. The road to reconciliation would be long, but Marcus showed him that all was not lost. John's phone vibrated in his hand. It was Angela. After 20 years of silence, she was about to see him face to face. his heart was pounding. He knew this meeting would be a test, a moment when all his arrogance and regret would be confronted with the truth. Angela entered the living room, elegant as always, but her eyes reflected a quiet strength and a mixture of defiance and disappointment. Marcus stood to greet his mother, and for a brief moment, John was struck by the beauty and dignity they both shared, despite the weight of years of absence. "Hello, John," Angela said quietly, but each word carried an intensity that cut through the silence. "Do you see what we've accomplished without you?" John looked down, unable to answer. He felt the weight of his guilt growing heavier with every second. Memories of his abandonment came flooding back with painful clarity, the nights Angela had cried alone, the advice ignored, the moments missed. Marcus intervened gently. "Dad, we're not here to punish you, but to help you understand the impact of your choices." Angela approached, but kept her distance, giving John the space he needed to realize the magnitude of his mistake. "You ran away, John. You thought absence could erase your responsibilities. But we survived, we grew, and Marcus thrived despite your departure." John felt a lump in his throat. I didn't know. I thought." He stammered. The words trailed off, insufficient against the power of Angela and Marcus's presence. Angela looked at him intensely. "You had a choice, John. You refused it. But today, you have the opportunity to understand, to repair, if you are capable." Marcus placed a hand on his mother's shoulder and smiled softly. "Mom, I'm proud of what we've accomplished. And Dad, you can learn and try to be a part of my life now. But it starts with honesty and respect." For the first time, John felt a deep humility. He understood that his apology was just a beginning. The real challenge would be to rebuild trust, not with words, but with actions. This confrontation with Angela marked a turning point. John Wallace realized that his life of material success could never compensate for the wounds he had inflicted. But for the first time, he saw a glimmer of hope, the possibility of slowly but sincerely repairing the bonds broken by 20 years of ignorance. A few days after the confrontation with Angela, Marcus invited John to follow him into his world. They left John's office and headed to the neighborhood where Marcus had set up his tech company. The modern skyscrapers reflected the Chicago sun, and John realized that this place was more than just a workplace, it was a manifestation of his son's strength, intelligence, and determination. "Dad," Marcus began as they walked into the glass-enclosed lobby, "I want you to see what we've built. Not to impress you, but so you understand that absence doesn't diminish a person's worth." John watched the young, energetic employees work with enthusiasm and respect. Some greeted Marcus warmly, and he quickly realized that his son wasn't just a boss, he was an admired and respected leader. Every decision he made, every word he spoke, was listened to and valued. Marcus led him into a large conference room where digital boards displayed large-scale projects, ranging from technological innovation to community initiatives. "We work with influential leaders across the country," Marcus explained. "But what I consider most important are our philanthropic projects. We help disadvantaged youth access education and technology, giving them opportunities one didn't have at your age." John felt a lump form in his throat. Every success, every project of Marcus's, was a cruel reminder of his absence. But this reminder was accompanied by admiration and respect. He saw his son not as a living reproach, but as an example of resilience and integrity. "You see, Dad," Marcus continued, "it's not money or power that matters, but what you do with your strengths and talents. You can choose to live in your regrets, or learn and change." John nodded slowly, aware that his material achievements had never been as valuable as what Marcus had built with courage and determination. For the first time, he understood that influence and true power came not from control or wealth, but from the ability to inspire and help others. As they left the company, John watched Marcus walk confidently, surrounded by respect and admiration. He knew his son had exceeded all his expectations, and that the road to reconciliation and learning would be long, but possible. The days following John's visit to Marcus's company were filled with profound reflection. Every time he saw his son again, every conversation with Angela, he realized the immensity of his past mistakes. But it was an unexpected encounter that would hit John harder than anything else. Marcus invited him to attend a meeting with young people he mentored through his philanthropic projects. In a simple room, far from the skyscrapers and luxury, John saw teenagers from disadvantaged neighborhoods, motivated and determined. They talked about their dreams and projects, encouraged by Marcus to believe in themselves despite their circumstances. "You see, Dad," Marcus said softly, "true strength doesn't lie in money or power, but in the ability to inspire and support others. These young people haven't had as much luck as you and me, but they have the courage and the will to change their lives." John listened silently, his eyes moist. Each story these young people told was a mirror of his own life, of opportunities he'd had but never fully grasped, and of chances he'd denied Marcus. He understood that his son wasn't just successful for his own sake, but was using his success to transform the lives of others. After the meeting, John turned to Marcus. I never understood," he said, his voice trembling. "Everything I ever considered important, money, prestige, it's nothing compared to what you're doing here." Marcus placed a hand on his father's shoulder with a patient smile. "It's never too late to learn, Dad. You can change your outlook on life. You can be useful, be present, but it requires humility and respect." John felt a mixture of shame and hope. He understood that his years of material success were meaningless if they were not accompanied by human values and compassion. For the first time, he felt ready to let go of his ego and open himself to real transformation. That evening, as he drove home, John reflected for a long time. He knew the road would be long, but he had finally understood what Marcus wanted to teach him: the greatness of a man is not measured by what he possesses, but by what he transmits to others and by the ability to recognize his mistakes. The following weeks were a mixture of emotions for John Wallace. Every day, he spent time with Marcus and Angela, learning to listen, understand, and accept the truth of his past. He couldn't erase 20 years of absence, but he could choose to stop running and begin to repair what could be repaired. One afternoon, Marcus invited John to dinner at Angela's house. The warm and welcoming home was a stark contrast to John's cold and luxurious office. Angela had prepared the meal, and for the first time in a long time, John felt that he was not a guest in this family, but a member who had to earn his place through his actions and sincerity. "John," Angela began, serving the meal, "I haven't completely forgiven you yet, but I can see you're trying. It's a start." John nodded, moved. "I know I've lost a lot, Angela. I can't change the past, but I want to be here now. For Marcus, and for you." Marcus smiled confidently. "Dad, this isn't easy. But I want you to be a part of my life. Not to erase the pain of the past, but to build something new." During dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. John listened attentively, shared anecdotes from his own youth, and gradually began to open up. Every word, every gesture, was a step toward rebuilding trust. After the meal, Marcus and John strolled in the garden. The silence wasn't awkward, it was filled with understanding and the fragile but real energy of a budding reconciliation. "Dad," Marcus said softly, "do you see now that love, patience, and discipline can build lives far stronger than ego and wealth?" John nodded, his eyes shining. "Yes. I understand. And I want to learn to be worthy of your trust, Marcus. I want to learn to be a real father." That night, John fell asleep with a strange but comforting feeling. The weight of his regrets was still there, but he had found a way to turn them into action, to rebuild the bond with his son and his family. For the first time in 20 years, he felt that hope could replace guilt. Morning broke over Chicago, bathing the city in a soft, golden light. John Wallace rose early, his heart lighter than it had been in years. Today wasn't just an ordinary day, it was the beginning of a new life, a day when he could finally put his regrets behind him and build something real with Marcus and Angela. In the garden of the family home, Marcus was waiting for him for a morning walk. John felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, but he knew he had to face his emotions honestly. "Dad," Marcus said, smiling, "we've come a long way in the last few weeks. But the real rebuilding begins now." John nodded. "Yes. I want to be there for both of you. To make up for lost time, not in words, but in actions. Angela stepped off the porch with a coffee in hand, her eyes reflecting both caution and hope. John, this isn't just about repairing what's been lost, she said calmly. It's about creating something new. A family that chooses to be together despite the past. John felt a warmth wash over him. For the first time in decades, he felt fully accepted and ready to become the man and father he should have been. He knew the road would be long and the hurts of the past would never completely disappear, but he had found the strength to walk alongside them. In the days that followed, John became more involved in Marcus and Angela's lives. He attended company meetings, participated in philanthropic initiatives, and offered his support without ever seeking to put himself forward. Every gesture, every smile shared, strengthened the fragile but real bond they were rebuilding. One evening, while they were all having dinner together, Marcus raised his glass and said, "To us. To our family. To what we have overcome and what we will build." Angela and John smiled, raising their glasses as well. The simple gesture sealed a silent promise: despite mistakes, abandonment, and regret, love and resilience could always triumph. And so, John Wallace discovered a truth he had long ignored: the greatest wealth is not measured in money or power, but in love, family, and second chances. With Marcus and Angela by his side, he understood that lost time could become a bridge to a brighter future, filled with reconciliation, respect, and hope.